Why rich people buy feelings, not things. Here's what nobody tells you about wealth. Rich people aren't buying cars, houses, or watches. They're buying emotional immunity. They're purchasing the right to never feel small again. And if you think this doesn't apply to you because your bank account has more commas than zeros, you're about to discover something uncomfortable about every purchase you've made in the last 6 months. You see, money is the most sophisticated emotional laundering system ever created. It doesn't just clean your clothes, it cleans your shame. That designer coat isn't covering your body, it's covering that moment in 7th grade when someone laughed at your thrift store sneakers. That luxury car isn't transportation, it's a mobile fortress against every person who ever made you feel invisible. The Rolex isn't telling time, it's telling everyone else that your time finally matters. Welcome to the psychological marketplace where trauma gets converted into status and insecurity gets rebranded as exclusivity. Let me paint you a picture. There's a fascinating study that tracked the behavior of people once their net worth hit $10 million. Something neurologically shifts at that threshold. They start breaking social rules, cutting in line, treating service workers differently, not because they're inherently bad people, but because wealth creates what psychologists call behavioral immunity. When you have enough money to buffer any social consequence, your brain literally rewires how it processes fear and shame. But here's the twist that'll make you uncomfortable. You're doing the exact same thing, just with a smaller budget. That coffee shop you choose because it's artisanal? You're not buying coffee. You're buying the story that you're someone who appreciates quality. That subscription service you never use but keep paying for? You're not buying convenience. You're buying the identity of someone who has their life together. That outfit you convinced yourself you needed? Be honest, what you needed was to feel like the kind of person who wears that outfit. We're all running the same emotional algorithm. The only difference is the price point. And the system absolutely loves this arrangement, because as long as you're trying to purchase your self-worth, you're trapped in an endless feedback loop. You buy something to feel better about yourself, it works for about 48 hours, then the emotional high wears off, and you need the next hit. Retailers don't want you healed. They want you just insecure enough to keep shopping, but stable enough to make the payments. Every industry runs on this quiet lie, that you are fundamentally incomplete until you prove otherwise with a receipt. But here's where it gets really dark. The more you try to buy your value, the more you divorce yourself from it. You stop owning your confidence, you start leasing it. Your sense of worth becomes tied to things that can break, depreciate, or go out of style. You're not building self-esteem, you're building a house of cards made of credit cards. Think about the last time you felt truly confident. I mean truly confident. Not because of what you were wearing or driving or carrying, but because of who you were being in that moment. That feeling? That's your actual worth. Everything else is just expensive camouflage. The neurochemistry tells the story perfectly. When you buy something luxurious, your brain releases dopamine, the same chemical involved in addiction. But when you do something that builds genuine self-esteem, like mastering a skill or helping someone, your brain releases serotonin and oxytocin, chemicals associated with lasting satisfaction and connection. One is a hit, the other is healing. But here's where it gets really lonely. When you use money to launder your emotions, you don't just lose touch with yourself, you lose the ability to connect authentically with others. Because money becomes your emotional language, and not everyone speaks it. You know that person who always insists on paying for dinner? They're not being generous, they're buying their way out of emotional intimacy. It's easier to pick up the check than to have the vulnerable conversation. It's simpler to purchase gratitude than to earn genuine affection. Or the friend who showers you with expensive gifts but can't handle you being upset with them? They're using their wallet as an apology machine. They've learned that money can smooth over emotional mess without them having to actually sit in the discomfort of conflict or growth. And here's the tragic irony. The more you use money to solve emotional problems, the more emotionally incompetent you become. When you can buy your way out of every uncomfortable feeling, you lose the capacity to process difficult emotions. You become emotionally atrophied, rich in resources but poor in resilience. So, what's the difference between someone who uses money as a tool and someone who uses it as emotional armor? Simple. Ask yourself this question before every purchase. Am I buying this from confidence, or am I buying it to fake confidence? If you're buying from confidence, it's usually practical, purposeful, or genuinely celebratory. If you're buying to fake confidence, there's always this underlying urgency, this sense that you need this thing to be acceptable. Here's your practical tool, and it's going to reveal some uncomfortable truths. For the next week, keep what I call an emotional receipt. Every time you buy something, anything, write down what feeling you were trying to fix. Loneliness, insecurity, boredom, the need to impress someone. You'll start to see patterns in what you think you need, and more importantly, what wounds you're trying to dress up instead of heal. Because here's the secret that the $10 million crowd eventually learns. True wealth isn't about having enough money to buy anything. It's about not needing to buy your worth in the first place. And the loneliest people I've encountered? They're the ones trapped in this question. Do people like me, or do they like my money? Once you start using wealth as relationship currency, you can never be sure if the connection is genuine. Every friendship becomes suspect. Every romantic interest becomes potentially transactional. You create the very isolation you were trying to buy your way out of. The ultimate prison isn't poverty, it's never knowing if you're loved for who you are or what you provide. The wealthiest person in any room isn't the one with the most expensive watch, it's the one who doesn't need a watch to feel valuable. The most powerful person isn't the one with the biggest house, it's the one who feels at home in their own skin. When you stop trying to purchase your identity, something magical happens. You start becoming someone who no longer needs external validation to feel worthy. Your purchases become celebrations of your success, not desperate attempts to create it. You buy things because you love them, not because you need them to love yourself. But more importantly, you start building relationships based on genuine connection rather than financial transaction. You can sit with difficult emotions, yours and others, without reaching for your wallet. You can be present with people's pain without trying to purchase their comfort. You can receive love without wondering what it cost. And that's when you realize the ultimate truth about money. It amplifies who you already are. If you're insecure, money makes you expensively insecure. If you're confident, money makes you generously confident. The money isn't the problem. The unhealed parts of yourself that you're trying to shop away, that's where the real work begins. So let me ask you this. What are you really trying to buy? And what would happen if you already had what you were looking for? If this hit you in a place you didn't expect, if it made you look at your Amazon cart differently, if it made you question what you're really shopping for, then don't just subscribe because I asked you to. Subscribe because you're ready to stop renting your self-worth and start owning it. Because the most expensive thing you'll ever buy is the lie that you're not already enough. And trust me, you were never cheap to begin with.